Welcome back to the Rebuilt Parish podcast. Today in the studio, we can't wait for you to hear how this one incredible parish leader went from flying Black Hawk helicopters in the Army to running operations in a parish. Today, we've got Tracy Giordano, Director of Operations from Church of the Nativity, to share all about how she uses those experiences that she learned in the Army from raising 4 boys and applied them into running operations at a big parish like Church of the Nativity. Now, whether your parish is big or small, don't worry. We've got some great nuggets of wisdom for you in there. Well, hey, Tracy, welcome to the Rebuilt Parish podcast.
Hey, Melissa, thanks so much for having me today. I really appreciate it.
Well, we're so excited for you to be here and share your knowledge. And I got to tell you, I cannot wait for everyone to hear your story.
I'm very excited to share and just so thankful to everyone who's part of Rebuilt.
Oh, my goodness. Well, Tracy, first, I think we need you to share your background. Can you just please let our listeners know a little bit more about you and how you became the Director of Operations at Church of the Nativity?
Sure, I'd love to. I had no idea when I was in college and pursuing ROTC that would put me in alignment for being here at Nativity, but it did. I started with Army ROTC, which led me to join the Army in aviation, where I was really blessed to be able to learn how to fly some Black Hawk helicopters. And if that training wasn't enough, then God blessed us with 4 beautiful boys that I stayed home with for about 10 years. And after about 10 years there, I was moved to this area and I started volunteering at Nativity. And a few years later, the position opened up here for Director of Operations Ministries, where I finally felt at home, my calling to be here, and I'm so happy to still be serving here today.
Oh, well, Tracy, I got to tell you, there's a few things in there that I love. I love all of your story, but I love how first your background is flying Black Hawk helicopters. That is incredible and amazing. And something I want to point out to all of our listeners is some of our best people in parish work don't have parish work experience at all. They've got outside experience where they can then bring those gifts and the things that they've learned outside of the church, inside of the church to help. So I love that. Second thing that's huge is that you raised 4 boys. And I mean, raising boys, that's a lot of work. That'll teach you a lot about working in a parish. But then lastly, one thing that I really want to hit on is that you started out as a volunteer. And we talk about this all the time, that our volunteers make the best staff members.
Absolutely. It gave me a ton of experience. I already sort of knew the culture and understood it. And the cool part was I volunteered in our littlest kid programs, our all-star programs, and worked through some elementary age school small group facilitator. And that was one side of it. When I joined Nativity, I was actually working with adults. So it gave me like the full picture coming in here, and a lot of experience really helped.
That is so cool. So you've got that well-rounded experience coming in. Now tell us, as Director of Operations, what does that look like? What are you responsible for, and kind of what departments kind of fall in there?
Sure. Well, I will tell you, like our number one priority on my team is the weekend, our weekend masses. We are always talking about being weekend ready. For us, that happens on Thursdays, that we're taking a walk through the building with the pastor and making sure we're all set. That's number one for us. In addition to having all of the volunteers that we need to make that happen on the weekend. So we're looking at those schedules. In addition to that, we're looking at any meetings, events, or campus activities that we might have as well that might be happening either during the week or on the weekend. And then we are, of course, are always looking at the maintenance of the building. We have very blessed to have a large building here. Requires a lot of maintenance, a lot of checking on different aspects, as well as the rectory and the security of the building as well. Most importantly, that I'd say of all that, though, is the support that we like to give our pastor. We like him to be confident that things are running smoothly, and we really strive to stay one step ahead of him. We want to know what he's concerned about, because our goal is to have an irresistible environment. We want this place to look great and feel good when people come in. And if we have an event, even if it happens to be on a Thursday, then we want to make it look like nothing happened when that event is over.
That is incredible. Now, tell us which ministries fall under operations, because I think some of our parish leaders in smaller churches might be listening and they might say, "All right, Tracy, that's great for a big parish like yours, but my parish is a smaller parish." But I think this is where you can show that you can have operationally sound ministries. And if you can just share what ministries then would fall under that operations.
Sure. When I talk about the operations ministries, I'm really focused here on those that support mainly our weekend masses. So that would include everything from the parking lot on in for me. So you won't hear me talk about the next generation program or our kids and students programs. This is the parking team, the greeters at the door, the hosts that are in the sanctuary are also called ushers, the cafe team that's running our Vision Cafe, our Eucharistic ministers, our Welcome Center ministers, who are those, and ministers by ministers, I'm talking about our volunteers, are at a kiosk right when you walk in the front door. And then most importantly, our operations ministers, sometimes Father White will refer to them as his favorite team. Those volunteers are helping us keep the trash empty. They're watching the bathrooms, making sure they stay clean and sparkly. And they're just going around, I'd say, with an eagle eye, and just making sure that everything looks great and ready for the next person to walk in.
I love that. I love that Father White calls them his favorite team. And I get why. I get why. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot of ministries right there. And not every parish listening has all of those. But I think what's great for them to hear, Tracy, is that even if they start with just one of those ministries, they're going to learn so much here from you today that they can apply it to that one ministry. Now,
Absolutely.
Tell us, how do these different operations ministries fit in, and how do they support the overall mission of the parish?
Yeah, I think that's my favorite question. The volunteers that we have are the heart of our organization. They are just fundamental to what we do to carry out our mission. We could not do it without them. So what does that mean for us? That we need to communicate really well with them. We need to help them carry out our mission of loving God, loving others, and making disciples. They are hospitality at every level. That means from the first parking minister that someone may see, to the greeter at the door, to the cafe member who may be helping with coffee. It's everywhere. And we care about each one of those volunteers like they're our family. And that's how we want to treat them each and every time they're here.
I love that. I love that you're talking about building a family here. And again, we talked about your background, raising 4 boys. That will teach you how to build a family with all of these different volunteer ministers. So now I need to know, what do you have a typical day, and what does that typical day look like for you?
Much like the military, much like raising 4 boys, there are not many typical days here at Nativity, and we love that. We are just very excited about the steady pace of different events, of different activities. It makes things so interesting and so exciting to come to work every day. We just want to make sure that we keep communicating, because there are a lot of different things that happen at here as well as many other parishes. So.
Wow. Well, how do you make sure that all of these different ministries all work together? Because we know that in a parish, we have to work together to make things succeed. How do you make sure that all of these work together to run smoothly?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the key for us 100% is communication, and that happens in so many ways. For my own team on staff, I have a small team that works with me during the week, and we have regular weekly check-ins. We have to meet about the things that are going to happen across the campus, and we need to communicate with our staff, and we need to communicate with our volunteers as well. So we make sure that we send out consistent communication to both. And that includes weekly meetings with our staff, just to give a small 15-minute update to what's happening on the weekend. and a weekly ministry newsletter that we put together to just, again, make sure that we're communicating what's happening. It makes things so much easier. And the more prepared we are, the more we communicate, then we're ready for what's always going to happen, which is the unexpected.
Well, we know the unexpected happens in church life all of the time. And in fact, sometimes more often than not. But, that's what makes it so that there's not a typical day to day when you walk into work.
That's right.
Well, what I would love to know is, how do you take those volunteers and how do you give, what do you do with them in the volunteer ministry? So what roles are these volunteers taking on?
We actually have a leadership structure for our volunteer teams. So we may have many, many volunteers, but it wouldn't work if we didn't have the layers of leadership in place. So we have different roles, and we in the way this works, the way you find out who's going to fit into what role is you have to know people. And I found this to be true with my military experience as well. You have to engage with people. You have to get to know them so that you can work together to find their gifts and talents. And then they shine and do what they do best for you. So we have leaders of each team. That includes also someone who's helping with scheduling for each team. Some people are really gifted at coaching other people on the team, and some people are just there to make sure that something's happening at the specific time at that mass. So all those different layers of leadership help to make each team great and kind of gives it its own personality.
Oh, that's so good. And when you brought in that military tie-in, it also made me think the military has different layers of leaders as well. And that's how it gets so much done. So same thing, that same principle applies here with your volunteers. And I love how you talked about making sure that once you get each volunteer, you're utilizing their various talents and gifts to help make that ministry stronger. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's lots of fun to interact with so many different people, and there's just so much talent in the pews. Sometimes people just need to be asked to help.
Yes. And that brings us to my next question, Tracy. What strategies or recommendations would you give to parishes who maybe need some help in some of these operations ministries? How would you recommend that they recruit some of these volunteer ministers to help them?
Yes, we actually have seen a big uptick in the number of people that serve who are already in a small group together. And if that isn't an official small group, maybe it's just even something you're involved with somebody else outside of the church. If you know somebody else that's going to do something at the church, then do it together with them. And people serve. I have 2 ops ministers that serve together on Sunday, and they have a great time walking around the building, getting all their steps in, helping the place look great, and they get a little bit of that time together. That really works great. Or referencing or giving somebody a reference to come and serve. Like, hey, I love what I do here. You might not like this, but you might try greeting this weekend. And it just creates a lot of great community if you serve together with somebody you already know.
I absolutely agree. I love what you said about small groups serving together. And we've talked about small groups in the workshops, and we've touched on them a little bit in the podcast. We're going to have an entire series about them. But Tracy, you brought up a great point, is that small groups, part of what they do is serve in ministry together. And something cool I've seen too at Nativity is I met a mother and daughter greeter team at your Saturday evening mass. And I just think it's so sweet that this is an opportunity for a mother and daughter and whole families sometimes to all serve together. Just what a great bond that brings.
Yeah, we see a lot of the family serving together at some of our one-off events. So especially Christmas Eve, where maybe some college kids are coming home for that break, or Easter time, we get a lot of families that want to serve all together, greeting together before they go in for Mass. And it does create a great culture. And then these people might come back and maybe they only are serving at Christmas and Easter. That's what they can do for the year, but they do it consistently. And then over time, as things change, they start serving on the weekend, and they invite other friends and family members to serve with them as well.
That's so good. Those one-off events are a great place to recruit other volunteer ministers. We're going to talk about that actually in our upcoming workshop series. which is all about recruiting those volunteer ministers. So we talked about some of the fun stuff. We talked about, building up those volunteer teams and layers of leaders. But I got to ask you, what are some of the biggest challenges you faced in some of these operations ministries?
So I would say one of the biggest challenges is the combining the level of excellence that we are striving to obtain with the level of community feel that we want to exude here. So we want things to be great. We want this to work like that in a specific way, but we don't want ministers to be just completing tasks. That's not why they're here. They're here to serve, and they're here to grow in their faith alongside of us. So just trying to strike that perfect balance of excellence and community feel and serving the Lord is the hardest challenge.
That makes sense. Now, can you maybe think of one particular challenge, maybe when you had a significant, maybe a change in operations, or just any situation that was a challenge for you in operations?
Absolutely. The first thing that comes to mind is the first Christmas Eve we had all together here at Nativity after the pandemic. We had not had Christmas Eve here on campus in quite some time. Before that, we have had Christmas Eve at the Maryland State Fairgrounds, which easily holds, say, 6,000 people for one Mass. So without knowing how many people would attend that Mass, we were trying to set up for those people to come. We wanted everybody to come, but wanted to make sure we had enough space for everybody with all of the restrictions in place. So that was quite a challenge for us. And basically what we found is that we had to plan way in advance. That's what we strive to do on the operations team anyway, and have lots of contingency plans. We planned probably 3 times down the line of what could happen. And sure enough, some of those things did. And because we were prepared, that really set us up for the couple of things that we weren't prepared for. The team stayed calm. The volunteers were outstanding, and it just made it a great night, even though we weren't quite sure what to expect.
Wow. An event like that takes so much planning. And I remember what that was like, trying to just plan in our own parish for the first Christmas Eve back on campus. And now I'd like to know, so you went back to the Maryland State Fair this past Christmas, right?
Yes, we did.
Have you started planning for Christmas yet?
Yes, we have.
How long have you been planning? This is what I want people to learn.
Yes, so we actually just had our initial meeting last week for Christmas Eve. We had started with the contracts and things for the fairgrounds already, but we got together our production and ops teams just to say, where are we at? What are we kind of looking at? We have one more of those check-ins in another week before we will start in September every other week with a core group of people talking it through. Where are we going to have the kids program? How are we going to have people enter? What can we change about parking? Anything like that we're talking about ahead of time, so we get all of that out of the way, so that that night we can focus on all of the great stuff, which is gathering together for Mass.
And this is part of what makes an excellent experience for our parishioners and guests and those unchurched and dechurched people that are coming in, because you put in all of that planning. I love that. Thank you for sharing that, because I think sometimes as parish leaders, we can sometimes get overwhelmed with some of these big events. But that's why, by having somebody like you in place who can see these things and get organized and communicate effectively, then we can offer great experiences to those who are coming to Mass.
Yeah, we really find that taking the time each week, and not even for the big events, to prepare and talk through makes everyone's job on staff so much easier. We talk through the Thursday before the weekend, but then rolling into the next week, we pause, we talk about what went well, what could have been better. We want to talk about what events are coming up, because if you can take care of those events and make sure the space is set up, what we are striving for is to make sure that the people who are sharing the content, sharing the word, sharing music, are able to do that without any thought or concern of the space that we're in.
Yes, that's so good. And that's how you can have that overall impact on parishioners. And I think this is also how you can help contribute to the parish's mission. I mean, this is incredible. Anything else you want to say about how your teams help contribute to that parish mission?
The teams just make sure that everything is taken care of. And I know that's a kind of a general statement, but that means that if you were to, and this is what we do a lot here at Nativity, is walk the whole process through from the parking lot on in and think about the experience from that moment of someone getting out of their car. We do that, to make sure we're ready for an event. But we want to do that same thing for our volunteers. We're doing that to make sure that our volunteers have an outstanding experience as well. So when they come to serve, we want to make sure that they know what they should be wearing, where they're going to park, what door they're going to come in, where do they go to check in if they need to when they get here. If you can keep all of those answers available to them up front, then when they come in, their focus is on making disciples. And they know everything else is taken care of. So we really work hard to make that happen for our volunteers as well.
I love that. That's when you are taking care of your volunteers. I feel like we need a soundbite of this one. When you're taking care of your volunteers and giving them everything they need, then they can in turn focus on making disciples. Tracy, that's genius. That's genius right there. Well, can you share any examples of how improved operations have positively impacted one specific area of parish life?
Absolutely. I think about our small groups that we offered on campus twice now. We don't normally have that. And during Lent, the past 2 times we've done that, we've had to evaluate that. So we had set up check-in in a certain way. We had people in certain rooms, and we needed to evaluate that when it was over with, so that the second time we had it, we changed up check-in a little bit, made an area for troubleshooting people that needed some help. We put some more people in the hallways and kind of walked through that whole process and made sure that it was good to go. And that's an okay thing to do. If we are going to plan all these events, we have to take a minute and reflect on how it went. What could have been better? Don't forget to celebrate the wins, of course, what went well, but what could have been a little bit better? And then take some notes and make sure that we reflect on those the next time that event comes up, so that we make it that much better each and every time.
Oh, that's so good. So good. Now, what advice would you give to other parishes who are looking to improve their operations ministries?
I would say 100%, like I said in the beginning, that communication is your best friend. And for us, we see that usually needing to happen at least 3 times. You may send out an email about something. You may tell them in person, and then maybe one more time at the time of the event, like however that works for you, for your team. We print a document as well here on staff ahead of the weekend to just communicate. Same thing with our volunteers, communication and then preparation. Take the time to walk through each week ahead of time. Make sure you're ready for all of the events. If you don't have a scheduling software available to you, you can even lay out the events for your parish in the different spaces in a Word document and just see what events are happening in the different spaces. What is needed? Is there any cleaning needed? Any setup of tables and chairs? Any food needed for those events? All of those things, that preparation takes all of that out of the picture, so that, again, when you arrive, you and the volunteers can just focus on making disciples, and it makes the event so much better.
That is so wise to just have it all out there, even if you don't have a fancy system or tool for it yet. But speaking of some of those tools, what are some of those tools you would recommend for parishes to use to help them in their operations ministries?
Our number one platform that we use here at Nativity is eSpace. It is our scheduling software. We have all of our staff trained in that, so all of our events are put in there. It reserves spaces so that people aren't trying to meet in our one conference room all at the same time. It, again, just gives a better feel that I know where I'm going to be for the meeting. Everybody has a focus. You don't waste time on where we're going to meet. It's super helpful. We also use Planning Center for our volunteers so that they're scheduled for the weekend masses. Those are the same every weekend, and it allows really the benefit of that is it allows our volunteer leader team to be able to schedule for us so that we're not having to do that. We can check on it, but we're not doing that actual work. And then we use Ministry Platform as well, which is a large database with our contacts. It just helps us just take care of people better.
Those are so good. So I'm making a note. I'm going to put all of these in the show notes for people. So make sure just to click in the show notes so that way you can see what those links are. So we've got eSpace, Ministry Platform, and what was the last one? What was the other one?
And Planning Center.
Planning Center. Thank you. Well, Tracy, we have time for one more question. And I want to ask you this because when we chatted the other day, I was blown away when you told me about this event that's happening tomorrow that only happens once a year, the amount of planning that goes into it, and how you have ministers who are volunteers who will take off work to come and work this event. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So the event we have tomorrow welcomes about 1,400 parish school staffs to our campus. Some of these people may have never been to Nativity before. And the most amazing thing is that our volunteers are so a part of us that they want to create the same weekend culture that we have for this event. So they've known about this date. They've taken time off of work. They can't even park probably within a quarter mile of the church because of the number of people coming, and they just jump right in and they're ready to be here as early as 6 a.m. as some of our coffee needs to be made bright and early. And they come in and they just make it such a great feel, an irresistible environment for everybody that's coming. And it ends up being a great way to just build esprit de corps. Like as we're headed in to this event, it carries over to the weekend and our volunteer teams can just engage and have fun and create a great experience and hopefully make some new disciples as well.
That is amazing. And what I think is so great about what you've built and what this team at Nativity has built together is this incredible culture where the volunteer ministers feel so loved, like they're so part of a family that they want to come back on campus and help. And they take that part of their discipleship so seriously that they take off of work to come in, and some of them at 6 a.m. to come in and help volunteer for an event that really has nothing to do with the parish at all. But it's an evangelization opportunity for some of those that don't get to Mass. I'm blown away by this one, Tracy. I love it. Well, Tracy, thank you for everything today. Do you have any final words for our community today?
I would just say keep engaging with your volunteers, get to know them one-on-one, learn their names, and make them a part of your family. And it just makes your whole weekend experience that much better and meets the goal of making new disciples and serving for the Lord.
Thank you, Tracy. Well, to our community and all of our listeners out there, we do have a free tool to help you evaluate how your ministries are and help you to come up with what you can do to make them better and build that community. If you go to rebuiltparish.com/ministry evaluation, you can have access to that free tool. Don't worry, we're going to put it in the show notes for you. So it's rebuiltparish.com/ministry evaluation. Well, thank you again, Tracy. Thank you to our listeners and community. We're so grateful for you, and we'll see you next time.